scientists! Today we'll be talking about the structure and function of DNA. The big idea for this lesson is that DNA's nucleotides contain the code for all living things. We'll start with the function of DNA. DNA stores, copies, and transmits genetic information. So within the code of the nucleotides, we have all of the genetic information stored. We can make copies of it in mRNA, and then we transmit it, we pass it down from parent to offspring. So we think about this at the level of the gene. So genes are directions to create proteins. Each gene codes for a protein. And we know that proteins are all of the molecules that do the jobs in your body. Right? So they make all of the things that we need, and they do the jobs that are the different functions for the different cells. Genes are what are passed from parent to offspring. And every gene its directions, but those directions are written in the language of nitrogenous bases. So we remember from our last lesson that a nitrogenous base is one part of the nucleotide monomer of DNA, and we'll learn more about that code in a couple minutes. Okay, when we think about DNA structure, we think about it like a ladder. So as a reminder, here I have one nucleotide, one monomer, and those monomers are joined together in a chain on one side and then linked to a second polymer chain on the other side. And each nucleotide consists of a sugar, a phosphate, and a nitrogenous base. So the sugars and the phosphates are what binds together in the chains. They make up the sides of our ladder. And then the bases stick out sideways from both chains into the middle and make the rungs of our ladder. And the bases are held together by these weak bonds, hydrogen bonds. So that's what sticks the bases together, the nitrogenous bases together, to form the rungs. And hydrogen bonds, like we said, they're pretty weak. They're sticky but not super strong, and so they're pretty easy to pull apart, which will become important later on. So again, sugars and phosphates are the sides of our ladder, and then the bases held together by hydrogen bonds form the rungs of the ladder. We have 4 types of bases in DNA. Adenine, which we abbreviate A, and thymine, which we abbreviate T, always bind together. And then guanine, G, and cytosine, C, always bond together. So I like to think about this as the letters with straight lines always bond together, and then the letters that are composed of the curvy line are always bound together. So anywhere I see a T, I'll see an A on the opposite side. Anywhere I see an A, I'll see a T on the opposite side, and then same thing with G and C. And so this is something that we'll practice. Given the code on one side of the polymer, we can predict the code on the other side, knowing these pairings. And so we'll take a minute to practice that now. We call this complementary pairs. So I see an A, so I know A binds with T. I see a T, I know T binds with A, so there'll be an A on the opposite side. I see a C, and I write in G, and then I'm going to keep going. So you can pause the video to take a minute to finish this writing in the second strand right now. Finally, we think about the structure of DNA with a double helix model. So double for 2, we have 2 DNA strands. And then helix, we can think about helix as being the same thing as a spiral. You can use whichever word you like. And so those 2 strands twist around each other like a spiral. So the picture I have here is it stretched flat and not twisted. The 2 sides are anti-parallel. So parallel means, right, that they pass next to each other, and anti, we can think about like opposite. So they're next to each other, but they're opposite. So one side starts with a phosphate, you can see that in the top left corner, and then the top right corner starts with a sugar. And so we label these these sides, or these ends of the two strands as 5' and 3'. 5' is the phosphate end, so you can see that they are in opposite corners. One is the top of the strand and one is the bottom of the strand. And I like to think about that F sound as being the thing that makes me remember that those two are together. So 5 and phosphate start with the same sound. And then the 3' end is the sugar end, so you can see that top right and bottom left. And then finally, our model of DNA says that the two strands are complementary, which just means that A's bind to T's and C's bind to G's. So wherever we see a C, we'll see a G on the opposite strand, and we can predict the sequence that way. That's it for today. If you have any questions, please leave them in the comments below.